Welcome to our channel, where we dive deep into the most shocking, emotional, and unforgettable stories that shake the foundations of human relationships. Here, we don't just tell you what happened, we peel back the layers of the characters' minds, exposing their darkest secrets, their deepest fears, and the decisions that destroy lives. If you crave drama, betrayal, passion, and the kind of tension that leaves you breathless, you are in the right place. Today's story is not just about love, but about jealousy so intense it becomes madness, and about the destructive choices that push human beings beyond the point of no return. Leslie had always thought she understood control. She had built her life on it: control over her emotions, control over her reputation, control over the relationships she carefully crafted to appear perfect from the outside. But control is a fragile mask, and one moment was enough to shatter it completely. That moment came when she saw June standing too close to Ted. It wasn't just the closeness, it was the intimacy. The soft way Ted leaned toward June, the glow on June's face as if she were basking in a warmth meant only for her, the subtle brush of fingers that seemed so casual yet burned itself into Leslie's mind like a brand. In an instant, something inside Leslie cracked open. It wasn't a clean break, it was jagged, violent, and impossible to repair. What poured out from that crack was a torrent of rage, envy, and humiliation so overwhelming that she could barely breathe. The sight of June beside Ted stripped Leslie of every illusion she had clung to. All the promises Ted had made, every look of tenderness, every whispered vow of loyalty, now they twisted into cruel jokes replaying in her head. She felt stripped bare, mocked by the universe, as though she had been nothing more than a temporary distraction while Ted secretly longed for someone else. And not just anyone else, but June, a woman who carried herself with effortless radiance, a woman Leslie could never erase or outshine no matter how hard she tried. Leslie's anger was not only directed outward, it turned inward, a corrosive acid eating through her sense of self. She questioned her worth, her choices, her ability to ever hold on to anything. The more she thought about Ted and June, the more the images twisted into grotesque hallucinations. In her mind, June's smile became a taunt, Ted's laugh became a betrayal, and every memory of their intimacy transformed into a reminder that she had been deceived, discarded, replaced. She tried to reason with herself, but logic was powerless against the storm. She told herself that perhaps Ted had not crossed a line yet, that perhaps June did not mean to steal anything. But reason drowned beneath the rising tide of paranoia. Leslie's mind replayed the same scene again and again, each time amplifying June's beauty, Ted's warmth, and her own sense of invisibility. The more she thought, the more she convinced herself that their betrayal was already sealed, and that she was nothing but an obstacle in their path. Every passing day became unbearable. Leslie's world narrowed to the trio of herself, Ted, and June, a toxic triangle in which she was the unwanted angle, destined to be cut away. She began watching June obsessively, her eyes lingering on every gesture, her ears straining for every word. Even the smallest detail became evidence in Leslie's mind, evidence of conspiracy, of betrayal, of an unspoken war that she was already losing. At night, she could not sleep. Dreams assaulted her with visions of Ted and June together, whispering to each other, laughing at her misery, their bodies entwined while she screamed from the shadows, unable to intervene. She woke in cold sweat, heart pounding, the image still vivid, the sound of their laughter ringing in her ears. Those nights bled into her days, and soon she could no longer tell where her nightmares ended and her waking paranoia began. What tormented her most was not just the jealousy, but the feeling of being powerless. Leslie was a woman who had always controlled her narrative, who had always found a way to stay on top. But here, she was crumbling. The more she tried to suppress her fury, the more it grew, pushing her to imagine darker possibilities. What if she humiliated June? What if she destroyed her completely, ensuring she could never stand by Ted again? The ideas came to her unbidden, chilling in their intensity. She pictured June's downfall in vivid detail, her smile wiped away, her reputation shattered, her confidence broken beyond repair. In those imaginings, Leslie felt a perverse comfort, a fleeting sense of power. Yet even those fantasies could not soothe her for long, because she knew Ted would still remain tainted by betrayal. The bond between them had already been poisoned, and no matter what she did to June, she could never erase the knowledge that Ted had once turned his gaze elsewhere. That thought was unbearable, a dagger that twisted deeper with every breath. Her reflection in the mirror began to change. The woman who stared back at her was no longer polished, composed, and radiant. Instead, her eyes were wild, her lips tight, her face marked by the strain of constant anger. It terrified her, but it also thrilled her, because that face no longer belonged to the victim, it belonged to the predator. And predators don't forgive. She began to plan, though not consciously. Her thoughts organized themselves into scenarios of revenge. She would strike when June least expected it, when Ted believed everything was safe. She imagined scenes where both of them would suffer, where the illusion of happiness they shared would collapse under the weight of her fury. These weren't idle daydreams anymore, they were fuel, the only thing that gave her a reason to keep moving forward. Leslie's dissent was no longer hidden. Those around her noticed the sharpness in her tone, the coldness in her touch, the bitterness that clung to every word she spoke. But no one dared confront her, because there was something dangerous in her silence, something volatile in her stare. She carried herself like a storm waiting to break, and everyone around her instinctively stepped aside, unwilling to be caught in the wreckage. In the privacy of her own mind, Leslie felt herself crossing a threshold. There would be no going back, no forgiveness, no peace. She had been wronged, and the only way to reclaim herself was through destruction. Whether she would destroy June, or Ted, or even herself, she did not yet know. But destruction was inevitable, and the thought both terrified and exhilarated her. Each step she took brought her closer to the edge, and though she could feel the abyss yawning beneath her, she leaned into it willingly. She no longer feared the fall. The fall had become her destiny, her purpose, the only way to silence the screams inside her head. And so, Leslie transformed from a woman scorned into something else entirely, a force of chaos fueled by jealousy, betrayal, and despair. Whatever came next would not be rational, would not be kind, and would not be reversible. It would be catastrophic, and it would leave scars on everyone involved. This is only the beginning. The choices Leslie makes now will drag her, Ted, and June into a storm from which none of them will escape unscathed. Betrayal breeds consequences, and jealousy is a fire that consumes everything in its path. The question is not whether Leslie will act, but how far she will go when the final thread of control snaps. And that, dear viewers, is why you cannot miss what comes next. The spiral has only just begun, and the most shocking revelations are still ahead. Stay with us as we continue to unravel the chaos, the betrayals, and the devastating fallout that will change everything. If you don't want to miss the next explosive chapter, make sure to follow our channel, hit the subscribe button, and turn on notifications. This story is only getting darker, more twisted, and more addictive, and you won't want to look away.